The Korean War, everyone's favorite war, and a war that technically never ended. I have great uncles who served in this war, and today I will be talking about one of the most important events that took place during it. The Battle of Chosin Reservoir. Why is this battle so important? Well, to be straightforward with you, it's because of Tootsie Rolls. And since this podcast is sponsored by Tootsie Rolls, and we subsist primarily off of them, I was strong-armed by my legal team into making today's episode after months of me staving it off, but finally the Rubin family played dirty and kidnapped my children. And instead of going full Liam Neeson and killing everyone to get them back, I caved in and wrote this show. Obviously kidding. But Tootsie Rolls do play an important role in today's battle, as it may have been the difference between life and death for thousands of Marines that had just gotten outnumbered by the People's Republic of China army stepping in and backing North Korea. So get ready to spread some democracy, the good old American and United Nations way on today's historical quarrel. Welcome back to Historical Quarrels. I am your quarrel daddy, Tyler Eckhardt. As mentioned, today we'll be going over the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir, and the story about how Tootsie Rolls may have saved the Marines who were outmanned and desperately needed to find a way out of the predicament they had gone into due to a surprising amount of reinforcement that China had given to the North Koreans. Before we get into that, I do have a couple of announcements. First off, I am planning on launching a mini-series adjacent to this show that will be a brief 10, 30-minute episodes going over smaller events in history. This will be aimed at being more humorous and is intended as a way for me to practice my comedy writing and coming up with original jokes. They will be fairly sporadic and be named Historical Spats, so be on the lookout for those episodes coming sometime next month. Secondly, I will be finally getting some videos released for these shows and trying to add to the video portion of these episodes with some extra editing by adding in clips or pictures of the event during the episode, or just some documents and doing some basic edits. I've been slowly getting better at video editing and intend to make full use of the skills I've developed for your guys' enjoyment. Third, don't forget to hit that bell and smash that subscribe button to support the show, or leave a review if you are listening on a podcast player. It helps bring in new quarrelers who would love the show as well. That's all I have for today, so let's go ahead and dive into today's historical quarrel. You are listening to Historical Quarrels. So to begin today's episode, I want to briefly go over the Korean War, what caused it, as well as some important events leading up to the Battle of Chosin Reservoir. The Korean War was an intense and transformative conflict. It was precipitated by a variety of factors and marked by numerous pivotal events leading up to the Battle Chosin Reservoir. So the division of Korea into North and South along the 38th parallel after World War II set the stage for the Korean War. This division was a result of negotiations between the United States and the Soviet Union, who took control of the southern and northern parts of Korea, respectively, with the intention of liberating Korea from Japanese occupation. The division was meant to be temporary, but as Cold War tensions escalated, it became permanent, leading to the establishment of the Republic of Korea, which was South Korea, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea, each backed by the US and the USSR, respectively, and each claiming sovereignty over the entire peninsula. We also have the backdrop of the Cold War, just in general. It played a very significant role in this lead up to the Korean War. The U.S. policy of containment aimed at preventing the spread of communism, and the Soviet Union's support for communist revolutions worldwide created an environment ripe for conflict on the Korean peninsula. This ideological struggle between the superpowers made Korea a battleground for influence in the post-World War II order. And as tensions escalated between North and South Korea due to border skirmishes, and the desire of both governments to unify the peninsula under their respective regimes, these skirmishes resulted in thousands of casualties before the war officially began, underscoring the volatility of the divided Korea. The invasion of South Korea by North Korean forces on June 25, 1950, marked the beginning of the Korean War. The invasion was the culmination of extensive planning by North Korean leader Kim Il-sung, who secured the support of both the Soviet Union and China. The decision to invade was influenced by a belief that the unification of Korea under communist rule could be achieved and that the United States would not intervene militarily. Thinking for some reason that the U.S. wouldn't just step in and whip their ass for some reason. And, the United States under President Harry S. Truman responded to the North Korean invasion by seeking United Nations support to aid South Korea, marking the first significant military action under the UN flag. The U.S. involvement was driven by the Truman Doctrine and the policy of containment, aiming to stop the spread of communism in Asia. And so, to delve a little deeper into the complexities and nuances leading up to this war, there's a couple things I do want to briefly engage. Like I kind of briefly mentioned already, but just talk about it a little more. We need to talk about Kim Il-sung's rise to power. Kim Il-sung emerged as a leader within the communist movement in Korea during Japanese occupation. After World War II, with the Korean peninsula divided along the 38th parallel, Kim Il-sung was installed as the head of the North Korean Provisional People's Committee by the Soviets in 1946, and his leadership was marked by efforts to consolidate power, land reform policies, and the repression of opposition, laying the groundwork for the establishment of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, with the DPRK, in 1948. Kim Il-sung's ambitions extended beyond the North, harboring aspirations to unite the peninsula under communist rule, which he pursued with the backing of the Soviet Union and eventually China, because Mao Zedong was going to take over in China. We also have the CIA's role in South Korea. The U.S. played a significant role in shaping the post-World War II order in South Korea following the division of Korea. The U.S. military government in the South took steps to establish separate administration, which included supporting the formation of a South Korean police force to counter communist activities, which is what kind of led to the rise of more communists and caused more issues. But the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, was involved in supporting South Korean intelligence and security apparatuses, helping to bolster the regime of Syngman Rhee against the internal and external communist threats. This included training and equipping South Korean forces and engaging in intelligence operations to gather information on North Korean intentions and capabilities. And so, along with that, we have the arbitrary division of Korea at the 38th parallel by the US and Soviet Union, which sowed the seeds of conflict. The division turned into a rigid and heavily militarized border, crystallizing the ideological divide between the communist North and the anti-communist South. Each Korea, with backing from their respective superpower allies, laid claim to the entire peninsula, leading to escalating tensions, skirmishes along the border. Essentially, I know I'm repeating this, but both sides really thought they should be in charge of the entire peninsula. They're like, all of Korea should be under Communist Party, or all of Korea should be fucking anti-communist. And yeah. We also have domestic and international context. Domestically, both North and South Korea face significant internal challenges, including political repression, economic hardship, and social unrest, especially after World War II. And they were tired of getting buck-fucked by the Japanese. They're pretty sick of it. Internationally, the early Cold War context heightened the strategic importance of the Korean Peninsula. The victory of the Chinese Communist Party in 1949 and the subsequent alliance between the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea alarmed the U.S. and its allies, who feared the spread of communism in Asia. They were freaking the fuck out. They're like, oh shit, this is gonna be real bad for Europe if this happens. So a bunch of military preparation skirmishes in the years leading up to Korean War. Both North and South Korea engaged in military buildup and skirmishes along this 38th parallel. These confrontations included border clashes and incursions, which both sides used to test each other's resolve and capabilities. The decision by Kim Il-sung to invade South Korea in June of 1950 was made with the assurance of support from both the Soviet Union and China. Despite initial hesitations, Stalin and Mao Zedong eventually gave their backing for the invasion, believing that a quick victory was possible and the U.S. would not intervene directly in time, essentially, before they could take over. So they're planning on just like steamrolling over South Korea. So on June 25th, when they did invade, it prompted a swift response from the international community. So the UN and US was like, well, we're gonna fuck over you guys now. So with the Soviet Union absent, unable to veto, passed resolutions condemning the invasion and establishing a UN command to support South Korea. The United States, leading the UN forces, intervened militarily, marking the official start of the Korean War. Early stage of the war saw rapid advances by North Korean forces capturing Seoul and pushing South Korean and UN forces to the Pusan perimeter, a small area in the southeast of the peninsula. This period highlighted the initial unpreparedness and underestimation of North Korean capabilities by South Korean and US forces. They were on the brink of defeat. But the tide of war began to turn with the Incheon landing in September of 1950, led by General Douglas MacArthur. This bold amphibious assault resulted in the recapture of Seoul and forced North Korean troops to retreat northwards, marking a significant strategic victory for the UN coalition. They whipped some ass. And that amphibian landing and maneuver is considered one of the greatest military strategy movements of all time. Honestly, I could go into it a little more, but I got to get this done. So we're going to keep doing this. The war's progression saw fluctuating front lines, with both sides experiencing victories and setbacks. The period leading up to the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir was particularly brutal, characterized by fierce fighting and challenging terrain and harsh winter conditions. The conflict fundamentally changed the geopolitical landscape of Northeast Asia and had profound implications for U.S. foreign policy. And it solidified the division of Korea, led to the militarization of the Cold War, and influenced American military engagements in Asia, notably in Vietnam. So, after Douglas Mac Daddy Arthur came in and whooped some ass, using that amphibian assault to effectively rout the Communist Army of North Korea, because Daddy Truman didn't want no commies mucking about in the world. Sorry, I'll take this serious. By mid-October of 1950, after the successful landing at Incheon by the U.S. X-Corps, the 8th Army break out from the Pusan perimeter and the subsequent pursuit and destruction of the Korean People's Army, the KPA. The Korean War appeared to be all but over. They were that assured of victory. They're like, well, we're done. We won. We kicked your guys' asses. The United Nations forces advanced rapidly into North Korea with the intention of reuniting North and South Korea before the end of 1950. They were going to do what the Soviets planned to do, essentially. North Korea is divided through the center by the impassable Taebaek Mountains, which separated the UN forces into two groups. The U.S. 8th Army advanced north through the western coast of the Korean Peninsula, while the Republic of Korea, or ROK, R-O-K, I Corps, and the U.S. X Corps advanced north on the eastern coast. At the same time, the People's Republic of China entered the conflict after issuing several warnings to the United Nations. Zhu Enlai used explicit language to warn Washington that if UN/US forces advance in Korea continued, we will intervene. However, US policymakers and military planners dismissed Zhu's warnings as bluffing. This was not due to an intelligence failure. Actually, since late summer, U.S. intelligence services had known well about Chinese military deployments along the Yalu River. Yet U.S. policymakers did not take this information seriously. They paid more attention to Soviet military involvement, or lack of it, in the Far East, when they found little evidence of Soviet willingness to intervene in the war. They concluded that it was less likely that a full-scale Chinese intervention in Korea would occur, even though they were warned. The Chinese hesitated to intervene in the Korean War until after the Incheon landing. Party officials led by Mao Zedong agonized over the decisions, finally agreeing on October 2nd to act. Difficulties in mobilizing the troops and a further halt when the Russian renegade on their agreement to provide air support delayed the entry of the Chinese troops until October 20th. So the Russians kind of backed out a little bit. They're like, I don't know about this. And China was like, well, fuck, man, if we're going to enter, we need this support, dude. And Russia was, sorry. I do not think I can do that right now. And so the initial Chinese plan was to move into Korea, develop a defensive base in the central mountain region of North Korea, and hold a line across the peninsula from Cheongju to Hamhong. The Chinese planned to hold that line through the winter while the Russians re-equipped the Chinese army with modern weapons and equipment. Then in the spring, retrained and equipped with modern weapons, they planned to launch an offensive that would drive all UN forces from Korea. And by the 20th of October, as Chinese began to cross the river, the 8th Army had secured Pyongyang and commenced a drive north across the Chongchan River to the Yalu border. Unable to reach their planned positions in time, the Chinese collided with the 8th Army north of Zhangjiang on October 25th. In 9 days of heavy fighting, the Chinese inflicted serious damage on the 8th Army and forced it to withdraw south of the Zhangjiang. On the eastern side of the peninsula, 2 ROC divisions had seized Wonsan on October 10th and were advancing north. Mao Zedong assumed that they would continue north through the Chosin reservoir area, then turn west. To protect the left flank of the Chinese forces facing the 8th Army, the 42nd CCF Army was detailed to cross the mountains, move south, and engage the ROK divisions. It was the leading element of this army, the 124th CCF Division, which was encountered at Sudong on November 3rd. Mao Zedong had expected the 1st Marine Division to land at Chinampo, the port for Pyongyang, and was surprised to find it with the 7th Infantry Division landing on the east coast. Realizing he needed more strength in the east, Mao ordered the 9th CCF Army group under General Song Shilun, consisting of 150,000 men and 12 divisions, to move into Korea, cross the mountains, and seek opportunities to destroy the 4 divisions on the east. The 9th Army Group began moving into Korea on November 5th. The 20th Army, 4 divisions, was to cross from Man, Pojin to Yudam, Ni, and initially cover the routes across the mountains leading to the west. The 27th Army followed, moving east to Changjin town and covering the route north. They were essentially, there's a bunch of armies moving around. They're all spreading out and getting ready to collide in like one area. And then by November 12th, General Song had devised a plan to attack and destroy 2 leading regiments of the 1st Marine Division, the 7th and the 5th. The remainder of X-Corps could then be annihilated one by one. General Song sent his plan to Mao for approval. In reply, Mao said, "The American Marine 1st Division has the highest combat effectiveness in the American Armed Forces. It seems not enough for our 4 divisions to surround and annihilate its 2 regiments. You should have 1 to 2 more divisions as a reserve force. The 26th Army should be stationed close to the front." So Mao really did not underestimate American forces. He was well aware of how fucking strong they could be. But now let's go ahead and get some context to the area where this battle was fought. Chosin Reservoir is a man-made lake located in the northeast of the Korean peninsula. The name Chosin is the Japanese pronunciation of the Korean place named Changjin, and the name stuck due to the outdated Japanese maps used by UN forces, which I am sure the Korean forces we were allied with were super cool with. You know, us using, and definitely weren't upset about the country who ravaged and raped them was supplying that much intel to the UN. Yeah. Koreans and the Japanese do not get along, man. Not get along at all. Anyways, the battle's main focus was around the 78-mile long road that connects Hungnam and Chosin Reservoir, which served as the only retreat route for the UN forces. Through these roads, Yudami-ni and Shinhong-ni, located at the west and east side of the reservoir respectively, are connected to the Hagaru-ri, now Changjin-up. From there, the road passes through Kotori and eventually leads to the port of Hungnam. The area around the Chosin Reservoir was sparsely populated. The battle was fought over some of the roughest terrain during some of the harshest winter weather conditions of the Korean War. The road was created by cutting through the hilly terrain of Korea with steep climbs and drops. Dominant peaks, such as the Phonchilin Pass and the Toktong Pass, overtook the entire length of the road. The road's quality was poor, and in some places it was reduced to a 1-lane gravel trail. On the 14th of November of 1950, a cold front from Siberia descended over the Chosin Reservoir, and the temperature plunged, according to estimates, to as low as negative 36 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 38 degrees Celsius. The cold weather created considerable danger of frostbite casualties and was accompanied by frozen ground, icy roads, and weapon malfunctions. Medical supplies froze. Morphine syrettes had to be defrosted in a medic's mouth before they could be injected. That'd be fucking crazy. You're watching your doctor trying to essentially just putting a bunch of morphine into his mouth, and then getting ready to inject it into you. You're like, oh God, I'm going to get some saliva. That's some cross-contamination issues right there for sure. It's blood plasma was frozen and useless on the battlefield. Even cutting off clothing to deal with the wound risked gangrene and frostbite. Batteries used for the jeeps and radios did not function properly, and the temperature quickly ran down. The lubrication in the guns gelled and rendered them useless in battle. Likewise, the springs on the firing pins would not strike hard enough to fire the round or would jam, which is, pretty fucking bad. You don't want that to happen. But this was true for both divisions. Although the 1st Marine Division landed at Wonsan as part of Allemann's U.S. X Corps, Allemand and Major General Oliver P. Smith of the 1st Marine Division shared a mutual loathing of each other that dated back to a meeting before the landing at Incheon, when Allemand had spoken of how easy amphibious landings are, even though he had never been involved in one. Smith believed there were large numbers of Chinese forces in North Korea, despite the fact that higher headquarters in Tokyo said otherwise. Baumann felt Smith was overly cautious. The mutual distrust between the commanders caused Smith to slow the 1st Marine Division's advance toward the Chosin Reservoir in violation of Allemand's instructions. Smith established supply points and airfields along the way at Hagaruri and Kotori. As the U.S. X Corps was pushing towards the reservoir, the Chinese formulated their strategy based on their experiences in the Chinese Civil War. Working from the assumption that only a light UN presence would be at the reservoir, the Chinese Ninth Army was first to destroy the UN garrisons at Udami-ni and Singhong-ni, then push towards Hagaruri. Believing the bulk of the U.S. X Corps would move to rescue the destroyed units, the Ninth Army would then block and trap the main UN forces on the road between Hagaruri and Hungnam. The Ninth Army initially committed 8 divisions for the battle, with most of the forces concentrated at Udami-ni and Singhong-ni. The flaw in the Chinese plan was a lack of accurate intelligence about UN forces. Turns out the UN did give a shit, and they wanted to add in a bunch more troops, and they weren't going to go back and get some, they would eventually try and rescue some troops, but for the most part, they had orders, and they were going to go take over Korea. Even though the U.S. X Corps was stretched thin over Northeast Korea, the slow Marine advance allowed the bulk of the U.S. 1st Marine Division, including the 5th, 7th, and 11th Marines, to be concentrated at Udami-ni. Furthermore, the strategically important Hagaruri, where a C-47 capable airfield was under construction and a supply dump, was not a priority for the Chinese despite being lightly defended by the 1st and 7th Marines. Only Regimental Combat Team 31, or RCT 31, an understrength and hastily formed Regimental Combat Team of the U.S. 7th Infantry Division was thinly spread along the eastern bank of the reservoir. Those units would later take the brunt of the Chinese assaults. As for the UN forces, the 1st Marine Division had an effective strength of 25,473 men at the start of the battle. And it was further reinforced by the British Royal Marines, Unit 41, Commando, the equivalent of 2 regiments from the 3rd and 7th Army Infantry Divisions. The UN forces had a combined strength of about 30,000 men during the course of the battle. UN forces at Chosin were also supported by one of the greatest concentrations of air power during the Korean War. Since the 1st Marine aircraft wing stationed at Yeonpo Airfield and 5 aircraft carriers from the U.S. Navy's Task Force 77 were able to launch 230 sorties daily to provide close air support during the battle. While the U.S. Air Force Far East Combat Cargo Command in Japan reached the capacity of airdropping 250 tons of supplies per day to resupply the trapped UN forces, which is nuts. It's a shit ton of supplies, man. 250 tons per day. Whoo, doggy. That had to be costly. This war was definitely costly. Although the Ninth Army is one of China's elite formations, composed of veterans and former POWs from the Huai campaign, several deficiencies hampered its ability during the battle. Initially, the Ninth Army was intended to be outfitted in Manchuria during November, but Mao suddenly ordered it into Korea before that could happen. As a result, the Ninth Army had almost no winter clothing for the harsh Korean winter. Similarly, poor logistics forced the Ninth Army to abandon heavy artillery. While working with little food and ammunition, The food shortage forced the Ninth Army to initially station a third of its strength away from the Chosin Reservoir in reserve, and starvation and exposure weakened the Chinese units. Since foraging was not an option in the sparsely populated area, by the end of the battle, more Chinese troops had died from the cold than from combat and air raids. Chinese strength is usually estimated at 120,000 troops for the battle. Before arriving in Korea, the Ninth Army was also reinforced. Each of its 3 corps had 4 divisions, instead of the regular 3. Thus, it had 12 divisions, with 10,000 men per division, which is nuts. Infantry formed from 2 formerly liberated or surrendered nationalist divisions were absorbed to bring each infantry company up to strength. Some companies had approximately 150 men, while others were reinforced with more than 200 men. However, attrition due to UN air raids, poor logistics, and cold weather had also taken a toll on the way to the battlefield. On the day Ninth Army entered Korea, for example, frostbite inflicted 700 casualties, while most of its transport vehicles were destroyed by UN air raids. Indeed, during the course of the battle, Chinese prisoners of war reported that most of the Ninth Army's divisions had become under strength, numbering about 6,500 to 7,000 men per division. These factors, plus uncertainties over the Chinese order of battle in Western sources, led some historians to revise Chinese numbers down to as low as 60,000 during the course of the battle. It's about even between the US and UN. Eventually, all 12 Chinese divisions of the Ninth Army were deployed, although the 78th and 88th divisions of the PVA's 26th Corps did not make contact with UN forces during the course of the battle. And on the 9th of November 27th, the PVA 20th and 27th Corps of the Ninth Army launched multiple attacks and ambushes along the road between the Chosin Reservoir, Kotori, Udamni. The 5th, 7th, and 11th Marines were surrounded and attacked by the PVA 79th and 89th Divisions, with the 59th Division attacking the road between Udamni and Hagaruri to cut off communication. Similarly, RCT 31 was isolated and ambushed at Singhongni by the PVA 80th and 81st Divisions. At Hagaruri, the 1st Marine Division command headquarters was targeted by the PVA 58th Division. Finally, the PVA 60th Division surrounded elements of the 1st Marines at Kotorori from the north. Caught by complete surprise, the UN forces were cut off at Udamni, Singhongni, Hagaruri, Kotori by the 28th of November. Now here is where tootsie rolls come in to save the motherfucking day. Acting on General Allman's instruction, General Smith ordered the 5th Marines to attack Mupyeong-ni on the west side of the Chosin Reservoir on the 27th of November. The attack was stalled by the PVA 89th Division and forced the Marines to dig in on the ridges surrounding Udamni. As night came, 3 Chinese regiments, the 79th Division, attacked the ridges on the north and northwest of Udamni, hoping to annihilate the garrison in one stroke. Close-range fighting soon developed as the attackers infiltrated the Marine positions, but the 5th and 7th Marines held the line while inflicting heavy casualties on the Chinese. As day broke on the 28th of November, the Chinese and Americans were locked in a stalemate around the Udamni perimeter. The most prolific legend about tootsie rolls at Chosin involves miscommunication between Marines and Air Force Supply Command. According to legend, Marines at Udamni and or Toktong Pass called for a drop of 60mm mortar rounds, codenamed Tootsie Rolls. That's right. They named these motor rounds fucking Tootsie Rolls, guys. It's great. So supposedly, the Air Force drop contained crates of Tootsie Rolls, not 60mm mortar shells. This legend gained momentum around 2000, the year 2000, as oral histories by Korean veterans emerged in large numbers. Nevertheless, there is no historical evidence that the story is true. Many Chosin veterans, also known as the Chosin Few, have mentioned Tootsie Roll's presence, using them to plug bullet holes in equipment and boost energy. They would straight up like chew up the Tootsie Roll, and then because of how fucking cold it was, they could stick it in equipment with bullet holes, and it would freeze and solidify up and like close it off. Which is nuts. And then like they'd essentially be eating these Tootsie Rolls and like get a sugar high. The Marines at Chosin did run out of artillery ammo and requested airdrop resupply. Still, these airdrops normally were pre-arranged quantities of ammo, medicine, water, rations, and weapons. with commanders able to request more or less of each. And between the 1st to the 6th of December, several tons of supplies were airdropped, most containing vital supplies. And some did include items that were not requested. I actually found, if you go on to the Korean War Project or www.koreanwar.com, you can actually find a list of supplies that were airdropped. And in some of these lists, Tootsie Rolls are mentioned, which is crazy. It's super cool. Additionally, only 60 to 70% of the drop supplies could be recovered. The rest were lost or too damaged based on this information. It seems most likely that Combat Cargo Command, which ran the airdrops, had a significant supply of Tootsie Rolls available and just sent these along as a part of the ration drop. Like, fuck it. Send some Tootsie Rolls in. That's what our boys need. They need Tootsie Rolls. They need sugar. Get it in their bodies. They were lightweight and hardy, making their recovery after being dropped much more likely than other supplies. They probably had not been specifically asked for, but it does seem that other asked for supplies did reach the Marines. Additionally, no after-action reports mention what would have been a significant screw-up. There is no mention of Tootsie Rolls at all, or that requested. Well, no, there are mention of Tootsie Rolls. I went and checked. Sorry, I'm reading this from online site, the usmcmuseum.com. Which appears to have some inaccurate information. So there is a mention of Tootsie Rolls, but there is not any mention that the requested ammo was not received. So the Marines of the Chosin Reservoir campaign certainly remember the Tootsie Rolls fondly in interviews after the war. Now here's a more detailed account of that day and the battles that took place. So the PV 89th Division was, as night came, 3 Chinese regiments again came in and they started doing close quarters combat. And the 5th and 7th Marines held the line while inflicting heavy casualties on the Chinese. And due to the gun jamming, there was a lot of close quarter combat and hand-to-hand combat. And so these Marines, powered by Tootsie Rolls and cocaine, they were able to rip the head off of many opposing combatants and devour their blood to fuel their coke and Tootsie Roll rage further. This report actually led to the Rubin family test launching a fusion product of Coke and regular Tootsie Rolls that was known as Cookie Rolls. The product would have a failed launch due to the name Kooky, spelled Kooky, sounding too similar to the name Cookie, like the treat, like a cookie, like an Oreo cookie, causing confusion for the lead-addled minds of American families in the 1950s. On top of that, upon testing the product, the taste testers became addicted to it and would actually sleep in the factories where they were producing the product to try and steal the rolls, which were said to be pretty much 70% cocaine with a little bit of chocolate. These original product testers were even said to be begging the workers, even going so far as to offer fellatio to some of them for just one roll. Luckily, the owners of Tootsie Rolls had a conscience and decided that maybe this product, which was intended for kids, shouldn't be pushed out, and opted instead to add the vanilla flavor just to keep the coloring of the cookie rolls consistent, and opted to keep the name as just Tootsie Rolls. And we were actually able to uncover an ad that they had planned for the cookie roll product that was only played once in the Mansfield, Ohio area.
Boys and girls, you can spell cookie rolls however you want, because it doesn't matter. What does matter is that cookie rolls are the best thing you will ever eat in your entire life. I can promise you that the first time you try this sweet treat, you will want another, then another, then another, and you won't stop until you are forced out of the candy store. You will more than likely want to steal your dad's wallet to go and buy more of this delicious roll. Hell, your dad, if he isn't fighting in the war, will already have spent all of his money on this. Your family may even become completely desperate to get more of this tasty treat, to the point they would do absolutely anything for it. Just ask one of our certified treat tasters, Jim, here about it. Jim, why don't you go ahead and tell the young tykes just how much you love our cookie rolls?
Oh yeah, it's the best, kids. Don't even want to know the things I've had to do just to get some more of it. I traded my dignity away and it was worth it. Am I gonna get more of them rolls now?
Shut the fuck up, Jim. You'll get more when we tell you you can.
Now get back to the
Okay, what the fuck, man? That's right, kids. You could say Jim will never get enough of these sweet treats. Why, I am even certain that we could ask him to chop his own arm off and he'd do it. I've seen Jim once take 5 full loads from some of our truck drivers just to get a couple of pieces.
What's a load?
Ask your mother, dearie. Anyways, Jim, how about you go ahead and show us how badly you want one of these rolls by laying down in this box here.
Okay. And you'll give me a cookie roll?
Well, hold on now, Jim. You've got to earn them. And since you have no money, you're going to have to pay in blood. We know that most Americans desperately crave to watch violence after the first couple of wars, and so we are going to have this magician come in and stab some swords through the box.
It's just a trick, right? You're not actually going to stab me, right? This just seems like a regular old box. Wait.
Yep, kids, as you can see, cookie rolls are with it. And you two will do anything to get your hands on more
I thought we were
after
friends.
just one roll.
Why are you ignoring me? Oh, no.
Now, shut up, Jim. You stole from the factory, so you know why this is happening to you.
I have a family, Gary. Why?
Your wife left you because you lost your job.
He's not killing me, but
Jim, don't try that shit with me.
bad.
Stab him again, Greg.
Stop. Please. Please. Oh, God, no. Please.
Is he still alive? Right, Jim. Here's a cookie roll. You earned it. How does it taste, Jimmy?
It's so good.
Isn't it the most delicious thing you've ever had? Go on, Jimmy. Tell the little tykes for how fucking amazing it
It's
tastes.
so fucking good. It's so good.
Yeah, that's right it is, boy. You take that now. You take that. Take that, you little crybaby bitch. And all of this was worth it, right, Jimmy? Tell the little tykes. You'd have this happen to you again. With just one more of these tasty
I would. God, it was worth it. I would.
Get it right here, folks. Cookie rolls are so tasty you'd sign up to get tortured for it. So go to your local candy shop and pick up some delicious cookie rolls right now.
Fun times with the folks at Tootsie Rolls back in the 50s. Anyways, as day broke on November 28th, the Chinese and Americans were locked in a stalemate around the Udam-ni perimeter. While the battle was underway at Udam-ni, the PVA and 59th Division blocked the road between Udam-ni and Hagorui by attacking the defending Charlie and Fox companies of the 7th Marines. The successful assault forced Charlie Company to retreat to Udam-ni, which left Fox Company, commanded by Captain William E. Barber, isolated on a hill overlooking the Toktung Pass, a vital pass that controlled the road. On the 29th of November, several efforts by the 7th Marines failed to rescue Fox Company. Despite inflicting heavy casualties on the Chinese, aided by artillery from Hagorui and Marine Corsair fighters, Fox Company managed to hold out for 5 days while enduring constant attacks by the PVA 59th Division. And then we have the retreat hell story. On the 3rd of December 1950, as Smith's forces began prepping for the 64-mile march to the port of Hungnam, he uttered the immortal quote, "Retreat? Hell, we're just attacking in a different direction." That is some badassery right there. Goddamn. Hell yeah. The men were ordered to destroy whatever they could not carry, including rations. The one ration that they filled their pockets with were Tootsie Rolls. Shit you not. This is one of the stories. And Charms hard candy. As they marched south, fighting through the Chinese roadblocks, these pieces of candy provided an instant sugar rush that helped curb the rumble in their stomachs. Much to their British Royal Marine counterparts' dismay, the U.S. Marines were not known for their personal hygiene and trash disposal during the campaign. Along the route for the next 64 miles, candy wrappers littered the trail as they pushed south, creating a literal trail for the Chinese to follow. The opening display of Gallery 11 at the National Museum of the Marine Corps accurately depicts the Marines as they advance toward Hungnam. The Tootsie Roll wrapper in the display adds to the authenticity of that moment. And then on the a reverse on the other side, the Chinese story. It is always interesting to look at the other side of the story if it exists. Again, this is from that usmcmuseum.com, this paper here. In the case of the Tootsie Roll story, it does exist. The Chinese army under the command of General Sung Shi-lun suffered from the elements as much as the UN forces, if not more. They also lacked edible food and were forced to make do with whatever possible. As Marines left Udamni and Hagaruri, the Chinese looted UN supplies that they could find. The Marines did not take all of the Tootsie Rolls with them when they departed Hagaruri. In 2019, General Zhu Yaning of the People's Liberation Army stated that Tootsie Roll wrappers exist in the People's Republic of China's military archives. He said the Marines left them like a trail of breadcrumbs. It was not like we followed the candy because we knew where the Marines were, because we knew where the Marines were at all times. You know, that's them being cocky. We most appreciated any food that the Marines left behind. It is an exciting twist to the story from the other side of the fence. Who would have thought that the Marine Corps history exists in the Chinese military archives? So, after a short rest, the breakout began on the 6th of December with the 7th Marines as the vanguard of the retreating column. While the 5th Marines covered the rear, 171 at the same time, the much delayed PVA 26 Corps arrived at the Hagaruri with their divisions to relieve the 58th and 60th Divisions. And as the 7th Marines pushed aside the PVA 76 Division south of the Hagaruri, the 5th Marines took over the Hagaruri perimeter and recaptured the East Hill from the 76th Division in a last effort to stop the breakout. The customary Chinese night attack was launched, with the 76th and 77th Division striking the Hagaruri perimeter from all directions. The Marines repulsed the attacks, inflicting heavy casualties. So, after the failure of the 26th Corps of the Hagaruri, the PVA High Command ordered the 26th and 27th Corps to chase the escaping UN force, with the 20th Corps assigned to block the escape route. But with most of the 20th Corps destroyed at Udamni and Hagaruri, the only forces between Koto-ori and Hungnam were the remnants of the 58th and 60th Divisions. In desperation, Song Shi-lun ordered these troops to dig in at Funchilin Pass while blowing up the vital bridge, hoping the terrain and obstacles would allow the 26th and 27th Corps to catch up with the retreating UN forces. But it did not end up working out that way, because in what historians call the greatest evacuation movement by sea in U.S. military history, a 193-ship armada assembled at the port and evacuated not only the UN troops, but also their heavy equipment and roughly a third of the Korean refugees. One victory ship, the SS Meredith Victory, evacuated 14,000 refugees by herself, despite being designed to carry only 12 passengers, which is insane. I don't even want to do the math to figure out how many extra passengers that would, like, what percentage that is of. Oh shit, that's just crazy. Anyways, the last UN unit left at 14:36 or 2:36 on p.m. on the 24th of December, and the port was destroyed to deny its use to the Chinese. The battle ended the UN forces' expectation of total victory, including the capture of North Korea and the reunification of the peninsula. By the end of 1950, PVA/KPA forces had recaptured North Korea and pushed UN forces back to the 38th parallel. Serious consideration was given to the evacuation of all U.S. forces from the Korean peninsula, and U.S. military leaders made secret contingency plans to do so. The disregard by Far Eastern Command under MacArthur of the initial warnings and diplomatic hints by the PVA almost led the entire UN army to disaster at Chungcheon River and Chosin Reservoir, and only after the formation and stabilization of a coherent UN defensive line under Lieutenant General Matthew Ridgway did the period of headlong retreats from an attacking unsuspected foe cease. On the other hand, the battle affected the PVA in two ways, both of which had the result of helping the UN command to secure its position in South Korea. While losing North Korea, first according to historian Xu Guangzhang, PVA commanders were persuaded by their victories at Chosin and Chungcheon that they could defeat American armed forces, and this led to unrealistic expectations that the CPV or PVA would work miracles. Second, the heavy casualties caused by sub-zero temperatures and combat plus poor logistical support weakened the PVA's 8 elite divisions of the 20th and 27th Corps. Of those 8 divisions, 2 were forced to disband, with the absence of 12 out of the 30 Chinese divisions in Korea in early 1951. Rose says that the heavy Chinese losses at Chosin enabled the UN forces to maintain a foothold in Korea. And kind of brings us to the end of it. There is an interesting footnote here, though, because there was a request for nuclear weapons, and I just wanted to bring this up. So by the end of the withdrawal, the Chinese troops had advanced and retaken almost all of the North Korean territories. And on December 24th, that's the day of the retreat, where the last one retreated, MacArthur submitted a list of retardation targets in Korea, Manchuria, and other parts of China, and requested 34 atomic bombs from Washington with the purpose of sowing a belt of radioactive cobalt to prevent further Chinese advances. His request was strongly declined and led to his later dismissal, which is insane to think about. And TBH, well, here's some factoids. In 1950, the US had almost 300 nukes, and Russia had 5. By 1955, however, they had 200. So Russia had 200 compared to the US's 2,422. Now, if any of you have played the game Civilization before and do a tech speed run, you know that it is always best to take out potential aggressors before they can capitalize on a technological advancement, especially if you have a higher military count. And really, especially, like, let's say you're playing and Gandhi researches nukes and starts trying to develop them, you better nuke the shit out of him first. Otherwise, you are getting nuked yourself. Now, I'm not saying Douglas Mac Daddy Arthur was right to nuke the shit out of North Korea, or he didn't actually nuke it, but like to have that idea and then kill a ton of civilians. But what I am saying is, if you have the dominant military power and another nation is bugging you and won't sign up for some peace talks and won't submit, willingly, well, it might be time to halt their advancements in military technology and send them back to the Stone Age. And or gang up on them and just eradicate the military entirely and force them to demilitarize like we did with Germany. And when they eventually cave into your political ideology and concede that is the right way to govern a nation, and you force them to share interests with you, then you make a new ally, again, like with Germany. The US had a chance to nuke the fuck out of each communist country, but chose not to. And to me, that speaks volumes of our country's character, and is probably why I should definitely never be in charge of a weapon that changes the current world meta for combat. What do you guys think, though? Did America make the right move logically, knowing what we know now of how these countries are interacting with other nations? Maybe we did it. Morally, I think so, but I would love to know what you all think. And you can leave a comment below, or if you're watching on YouTube, or write into historicalquarrels@gmail.com. And I'd love to read some responses at the end of next week's episode and see what you all think. And that brings us to the end of today's historical quarrel. All right, guys, you did it. You made it to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed today's episode. If you didn't, fucking let me know. Interact with the show and let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed that fucking commercial. That was a pain in the ass to edit, but I was like, I got a showcase so like I can actually do some cool sound edits and do some fun shit. Sorry, Reuben family. I know you never do anything like that. You definitely didn't torture your chocolate taste testers, but I had to make something like that. I thought it was hilarious. Yeah, not a whole lot today at the end. I just thought this battle was interesting. I thought it was a really cool event in history, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Next week, gonna go into some more. I don't know. I have a couple ideas for next week's episode. I have 2 pretty much timeline scripts written out. So where I have the timeline of events and stuff, but I haven't typed in a bunch of other stuff or pulled in a bunch of first person sources to read. So I'm gonna choose between them. If you guys have any suggestions or battles you want me to cover, let me know. You can also do that by writing into the email, the historicalquarrels@gmail.com, or leaving a comment below on YouTube. I'll definitely do my best to cover that. I'm probably going to do something further back in the past again. So it's going to be more ancient history, less first person accounts, more just shit that we have here. The historians have gathered. Oh, sorry, a little sleepy. Had a long night typing up some of this. So, but seriously, thank you guys. Thank you so much for the support and for the love you guys have been showing to the show. Especially for Hard Homies. Hard Homies has been picking up a lot more. We've been having a lot of fun with it. I am so excited for my buddy to be moving back. We're going to be recording probably like more in person, like live episodes here soon. So that'll be a good time. It might not be live, and we might just do like a stream or two or something. So if you want to catch us on that, you can. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot, but if you guys are, I don't know, if you guys are having a hard day or hard week, know that it doesn't last forever. Know that there are good times coming around. It may take a month, may take a couple months, may take a full year, but good time is coming around. So don't give in to despair. Try and find something that makes you happy, or just try and go make other people happy. Like try and go do like food, like food shelters, and volunteer over there to help like prepare food for some people, and I don't know, just do something, like do some acts of service for other people, because it might end up making you feel good and making you feel happy. Really like that advice. So that's all I'm going to leave you guys with today. I am out. You have a good one. Bye-bye.